Hello everyone, NoirPhoenix here, and today I'm going to hopefully be teaching you how to play Screeps, hopefully. This video is just going to be an introduction, but I'd like to think that there'll be a whole series on this and how to play this game, which will be pretty fun. Yeah, I've picked out a room, I've placed down my spawn. I've missed a few steps really, but when you start playing the game you'll be able to select a room. I've selected a room with 2 sources, which I believe you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the most you can get is 2. The room controller is not in the best place possible because enemy players could come up here, really, and attack it. But for the time being, it should be fine. I mean, we've got room to defend it. But these sources are really good. You can get around 9 Screeps around them. How it works is a creep can mine something that's just 1 tile ahead of it. So if that logic in place, this one can grab 5 because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each can they can go diagonally as well, and this one can get 4. So that's 9 creeps. I mean that won't really matter later on because you'll have creeps that are using containers to mine, and we'll get onto that later on hopefully. But for the time being, to start off with many creeps, that is really good. Yeah, so without further ado, let's get started. So, what do we want to do? So, open up the window here in our main script. So, what we want to do is create a worker module which has the capability of mining the sources, bringing the sources back to energy storage such as spawn, and then later on we want these workers to upgrade the controller, which is this here. I'll get onto this stuff in a second. And we also want our worker to later on build and repair structures as needed. What I like to do with creeps, with building and repairing, is only use them when they're needed, because otherwise it's eating up CPU. I'm on a private server right now, so I've got 100 CPU. But if you're playing on official servers, unless you have a subscription, you'll have 20 CPU, which is totally fine. I'm still playing with 20 CPU, and it's totally fine. As long as you optimize your code, you should be good. Yeah, anyway, back to the room controller. So, as you can see, we've got this thing called safe mode in yellow. As long as this is highlighted, well, as long as you can see this, you are protected from any threats. Nothing can attack you. You are totally safe. However, as soon as that goes, you are in trouble. If someone decides to attack you, that is. Invaders will be able to come in, which are NPC like triangle things, which damage structures if they're in the way, but will just prioritize your creeps. And you also have other players, which is probably the strongest threat, because there's loads of them and they can be as strong as they want. So and you can code strategies in the way they attack things. So they're your biggest threats. Safe mode available. What that is whenever you level up your room controller, you'll get a safe mode, and you'll be able to, this will be selectable when you can use it. But you can also program this to automatically activate safe mode if you're being attacked or whatever, which is pretty cool. But I like to keep hold of these as long as possible. Downgrade. All that means is if you don't constantly upgrade your controller, this is going to go down, and if the downgrade goes to 0 ticks, then it's going to reverse back to a previous status. So if you're level 2, you'll go back to level 1. If you're level 1, and you go down to 0, you'll lose total control of the room. So you've pretty much game over. Progress, that's kind of self-explanatory. Every time you pump points into upgrade controller, that will go up. When you reach this number, you'll level up to level 2. yeah. So I guess now we can work on the worker module. So, what do we want to do? So to get started, we can open up the console and manually spawn one in. To do this, we want to get access to the spawn, which I've called core. It'll be what you do now is whatever your spawn is called. So, to get access to this spawn, what you need to do in console is game, and then in square brackets, oh no, sorry, game.spawns, and then sorry, the square brackets, and then in quotations, type in the name of your spawn. And then there's a pre-built function called spawn creep. And as you can see from here, it requests an array of body parts, the name of the creep, and then operators like memory, or you can do whatever really. I haven't really played around with any other thing than memory though. So we'll do spawn creep. So in this array, I want to work, and then carry and move. What work does is it does a lot of things actually. It's the more work parts you have, the more energy you're pulling out. It also is how much energy you're pumping into the upgrade controller, and how much energy you're using onto repairing, and their energy on building. So anything that requires maintenance really is work. And you want lots of work because it just improves efficiency really. Carry is kind of self-explanatory. It's the resources your creep can carry. And move, this one's quite unique. For each move component you have, it reduces the fatigue by 2, and fatigue is generated by every one component. So this is 1 fatigue, that's 1 fatigue, and that's 1 fatigue. So that's going to be 3 fatigue. By having this single move component, we'll have to wait 1 tick until it can move again, because this is going to get rid of 2, and it's going for each time it moves, it's going to put on 3 fatigue. So there's that. The more move, you can have more move components, but we don't have enough energy to do that just yet. This spawn currently has 300 energy, and each work component is 100 energy, each carry is 50 energy, and each move component is 50 energy, so that's a total of 200 energy. So I suppose I could have more move components if I wanted to. I might as well. And then the name, we could just call it anything, so we could call this worker if we want. Worker 1 even. Or if you want it to have a predefined name, you can just do undefined, and then the game will just generate a random name for you. And now what we need to do is define the memory in this case. So we're going to give it a role. That's all we're going to do for now. We're just going to give it a role called worker, and then finish off with a semicolon, and then enter, and it should create a creep. Or not. Why is it -10? Ah, okay. It didn't like undefined for some reason. There are ways of doing it. I've just put in quotations at the moment, but yeah, that's weird. Usually in code, if you write undefined, it will just it'll give it a random name, but maybe you can't do that in console. Cool. So we've got our little creep here now, called undefined. Right, let's get to coding him, I suppose. So what we want to do is we want to locate one of these sources, and that can be done by simply defining a variable. We'll call it sources, and we actually want to iterate through each creep, which we can do by doing for const. I like to do creep index in game.creeps, and game.creeps is just it's an array of all your creeps. It's no one else's, it's just your creeps. In JavaScript, when you do this type of for loop, it's actually like an index oriented one. It was really weird for me because I'm used to for each loops with C#, so it's a bit of a change, but it's all good. To actually define a creep though, we need to do in the for loop game.creeps, and then in square brackets, and then type in creep index, and that will be the actual creep itself. Let's just define it. There we go. So now that should loop over this creep. Cool. And now we've got access to that creep, we want to try and find a source, and that can also be done fairly simply. So what we want to do is get the creep's position by simply getting the creep and typing pos, and that will get the position. And then there's pre-built functions called find closest by path, find closest by range, and there's also find in range, but you don't want to really use that just yet. We want to use find closest by path. You could use find closest by range, but what I've noticed is if you have too many creeps, with path, if there's not enough room here, they'll automatically go to the next source. If you're using range, they'll just wait until there's an available slot, which you might want. So if you want that, you just type in range. The inside these brackets is no different. Right, so what we want to do now is find active sources. You want to do find sources active. You could do find sources, and that will return all of them. However, each source has a maximum amount of energy. If that energy runs out and you're using find sources, then it'll just stop doing what they're doing. Whereas if it's looking for the active sources, it's looking for sources with more than 0 energy. So yeah, if there's no energy in one, then they'll go into the next one if they're looking for energy. So that's what that does. And if we were to do console.log source, it's printing out the ID. So it's looking for the closest source, E6. So it's actually as you can see, it's printing out this one here. Apparently that one's closer to it, which it is because it's 1 block higher. Yeah, so it's working. Now what we want to do is actually get it to move towards the source, which is also fairly simple, you'll be glad to hear. So what we want to do is check the distance from the creep to the source. So if creep there's this pre-built for sources, you want to do creep.harvest. There are actually many of these. You've got creep.attack, creep.transfer, and there's more, but I'm sure we'll get onto that later on. But for this, we'll want harvest, and that's what you use to get these sources, and I believe you use it to get these minerals. But you don't have to worry about these until later on, when there's structures, which I haven't even gone to yet. Called the lab, I believe. Yeah, so we want to harvest, and then since we've got this, if you were to do find in range or just find, that will return an array, a table or whatever of these sources. What this has done is returning a single item, so we don't have to do this. We could just do source. But now we've done that, we want to make sure it's not returning a error not in range, which is defined as that. On the Screeps documentation, they've shown loads of these things as well. If you were to look up creep.harvest, it will show you all the error codes, which is pretty cool. It goes with everything. The Screeps documentation's absolutely amazing. Outside this video, I recommend you check it out if you're interested, because it's really good, I would say. Yeah, so what this is doing is checking to see if the creeps is not in range, but what it's also doing is actually calling this function. So if it's within range, it's not gonna output this, and the creep's not gonna have to move. However, if it does return this where it's not in range, it will then pass this on. So it could do creep.move to source. And then if we save that, we should see our creep here is now moving towards the source. And you should see it harvest as well. Yep, there we go. As you can see, he's getting carry there. And he's got a maximum of 50 carry, because he's only got 1 carry component. Cool. But what we're also going to notice is that he's going to keep harvesting now. He's not going to stop. We'll hopefully see that in a second. Yeah, he's still harvesting, as you can see. His animation's playing, and what's happening is he's dropping resources on the floor. So we need to stop that, and that can be done fairly simply. I'm actually going to create a new module for this, because then it's more... we can call it with other roles. So we'll call it is creep working. Get rid of this top bit. And with external modules, what you want to do is, I'm not sure really what this is, but from what I gather, the run bit is it's a function name, but it's a predefined one. This is the main function, if you will. When you're calling this script, you're calling this function. With that said, pass in the creep as a parameter, and this is going to be quite a short function actually. We're checking if the creep.carry.energy, is that right? I think it is. Yeah, so what we're referencing is the creep's inventory, if you will, and then we're checking the energy component, and if that is greater than creep.carry capacity, then we'll enter that, and then we'll return. I've actually forgotten. We need to reference the creep's memory. When we spawn in another creep, we're actually going to have to create a new thing called is working as well, but we can just predefine it here. So we want to access the creep's memory by getting a creep and then just typing in memory, and then we can reference the variable. So is working. Cool. So there we go. So if is creep working is false, and we can do that. Just a short way of doing it is by putting a exclamation mark in front of the variable, and that's just saying if it's false. If you wanted to say a quick way of saying it's true, is you just do it like that. You don't have to do is equal to true, but if you want to, for your own sake, you can. I'll do that though. So what this is saying is if the if the creep is working and the carry capacity is we should say greater or equal to, just as it's what you should do in programming really, because in engines like Unity, if you're running code at, I don't know how many ticks a second it runs, but it's quite fast, and you're using floats, there's a chance that the number's going to go over what you're expecting, so you want as validation is equal to or greater than. It's just a safer way of doing it. So if what the creep is carrying is greater or equal to the creep's carry capacity, then we can return false, and we'll see what that does in a second. Actually, no. For what we'll do is creep.memory.isWorking equals false. I don't know, do we need that? We'll keep that as a read value actually. Else is creep working is equal to false. No, sorry. Is equal. Wait, what? Yeah, is equal to false. I was looking at the variable at the top. That should be inside an else if actually. There we go. So it's false and the creep.carry.energy is less than creep.carry capacity, then return creep.memory.isWorking equals true. There we go. So what this code is doing is it's checking if the creep's energy is greater than carry capacity, and if it is, that means it's full. Then it's going to go and do whatever it needs to do. In this case, we're going to get it to go back to spawn. Otherwise, if it's not full, it's going to return true, in which case it's going to try and get some energy. So now what we want to do is we want to reference that script in here, and we can do that by this, just referencing it really in a module format. So is working equals require, and this is what you do to reference another script, and then quotations is creep working, and it has to be exactly the same as this, otherwise it won't work. Cool, and then we save it, and now what we want to do is use that in a validation. So if actually we also need to do this, is working dot run. As you can see, the run function. What we're doing now is we're referencing this, we're getting this variable, and then we're triggering the function that we've written here, so run. And then we also want to pass in the creep. And then what I'm actually going to do is create another variable with this. Creep working. And then it will return, it should return true or false. Or, actually, what we could do is... What? Yeah, we can just run that, and then that will update it, and then we can just check the creep's memory. So if creep.memory.is working, is that what I called it? Yeah, is working. If that is false, I'm gonna check it again. Sorry about that. So if it's creator, alright, yeah, if it's false, then it will go harvest. Else, if it's not false, then it will go back to spawn. Now what we need to do is check if the creep is... Actually, now that I've done that, we've got an error. What's the error say? Main 16. Ah, that's because I haven't done anything. If I just get rid of that, we should see it just stops harvesting in total now, which is what exactly we want, because this is now returning false because it's full. It's not. This no longer applies because it is true. So now what we want to do is handle that being true. So else if creep.memory is working is equal to true, then actually, and creep.transfer, this is where the transfer one comes in, and then we want to reference the spawn, game.spawns core. We'll find an easier way of doing this later on. It's just getting started. Game.spawns core is equal to error not in range, just like we did last time. And then creep.move to game.spawns core. And then finish it off. And now when we save it, we should hopefully see this guy coming all the way over here now. And I believe I know why it's working. It's actually a silly mistake on my part. It is because this guy doesn't have an is working component. Is that right, Mr. Man? Yes, it is. We'll quickly do something about that. Game.creeps and then undefined dot memory dot is working equals false. And there we go. I think. Yep, he's on his way to fill that up, and we should hopefully see him go back after he fills that up. Yeah, there we go, and that's now 300, and he's going all the way back. There we go. Awesome. So I think I might leave that for this episode, guys. I'll see in the next video. We'll have a look at distributing creeps into upgrading, which would be pretty cool, getting that all set up. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please leave a like, and then I'll see you around. Thank you very much.